Let's jump right in and get to work on our Project Z50 Cafe racer. We're going to get a lot done in this video, so let's get to it. First things first, we've got to address the rear tank mount. It's in the wrong position, so we're going to cut that off, move it back, and weld it back where it needs to be. Now that our tank is where it needs to be and that rear mount's done, let's move on to smoothing, cleaning up, and stretching the swing arm. So after drilling out the axle slots on the swing arm with our 15mm drill bit and a lot of filing, this is what we've got. Also went ahead and got the lug for the drum brake off. That took a little bit. Some saw action and then an angle grinder. And there's a lug still kind of left in there. I don't want that big hole in there, so I'll come back and I'll weld that up. And just general smoothing stuff out. Now we're going to come up with a jig to mount our swing arm so that we can stretch it and keep it all straight. So I've cut our 4-inch pieces of tube that will go in the gaps on the swing arm. And this is 7/8 OD with an 0.95 wall. I've beveled the edges. I've also drilled for some rosette welds, and those are kind of tapered so that we can get good penetration. And those holes for the rosettes, 2 on each end, should be plenty. They're big enough that if we did it with a TIG, we can get the torch in there. And our swing arm is lined up in the jig. I made one end. All this is a couple tabs with the actual swing arm bolt running through it, and a piece of flat plate clamped down to the table so it can't move. And then cut the swing arm, bolted it into our Mayhem Metalworks swing arm jig, made some aluminum spacers to keep the distance correct, and slid it back. You can see I made some marks on the table where everything is supposed to be, kept it all nice and lined up and measured, and we slid it back 4 inches. So that gives us our 4 inches here. These are like 1/8 of an inch under 4 inches because I want a little bit of gap. When I bevel these, I want to float that gap just a little bit because we will be making slugs that will go in here on both ends and will slide into each part of the swing arm, and that'll give us room to get a nice fat bead in there, fully fuse everything so it's nice and strong, and we'll blend it back so it'll look like one piece. We got our swing arm on the bike. It's not finished, as you can tell. It has a fusion pass with the TIG and then a pass with filler. So I know it's fused and it's solid and it's strong. So now what I need to do is to build that metal up essentially, so that when I come back to smooth all this out, there's enough material that we're not left with a divot, because we want this to be seamless. So what I'll probably do before the final build of the bike is I'll pull the swing arm off and run a bead, maybe 2 around it with the MIG, and then we'll come back and we'll smooth all that back, and it'll look like one piece, like we never touched it. But that is a full wrench on the dot stretch, and as you can see, there's plenty of distance between the back of the swing arm and the tire. Now I do need to raise the frame up, looks like a couple of inches, and then we can measure for our shocks and get the right length there. But for right now, what we need to do is start on the seat hoop. You've seen the seat, but we need to make a hoop that will actually attach to the bike, that the seat will then attach to, and there'll actually be a decent amount of space under the seat. And believe it or not, even though that's not very big, that will give us enough room to hide our starter relay, our ignition relay, the Moto Gadget M Unit Blue, and the battery, and maybe a couple other things that escape my mind right now. So we'll get to bending that frame. We'll figure out how to mount it, either use or make some tabs, get it all welded together, and then we'll probably have to make some sort of tray that'll go in between the loop, the frame loop for the seat, to house all our electronics and everything. So this is what I'm thinking for the seat. We have our hoop, and it fits our seat. Okay, and then what I'm thinking we can do is use these tabs, the threaded holes in the frame. They're M8 by 125, so I can bolt these tabs to those spots. And of course these are just with the hardware I had, but I'll need longer bolts and some spacers. And then what we'll do is the hoop, it's way too long, but the hoop will get welded to those tabs, and then we'll have to run some pieces of flat stock across here that correlate to the holes in our seat for the bolts. And I think that should work. You know, measure like 5 times, cut once kind of thing. So we're looking at something like that. But we gotta space the tabs out towards the seat hoop, so we gotta measure and make sure it's all centered. And I gotta cut the seat hoop to length. But I think you get the idea. After cutting the seat hoop to length and using a framing square to true up the ends so they're the same length, cleaned everything up, and then it was time to cap the ends. To cap the ends, I used 1-inch OD domed tube caps from bungking.com. definitely check them out. You can see how it fits. Then using a piece of angle iron, I set the two pieces together, made sure they were true and the fit up was good. And then I tacked everything, and we'll final weld it later, and this is the end result. Now I'm still just mocking up this rear seat section, so don't judge me too hard. I took one of the shocks off the Vulcan because it mysteriously looked like it was long enough to fit this bike, but believe it or not, it's not, which is strange. You would think the bigger bike needed a longer throw. Not the case. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, what I was seeing was real. So now that I threw these up here for mock-up to kind of see how it's going to look, no, I will not run gold and black shocks on this bike. They will be either a silver and black or chrome and black. But now I know what length I need, and I've got pretty much tacked up on the seat frame, but I need to add these gussets to the rear section. Initially, if you noticed, I was pointing to that rear lug for the rear seat. We'll just call this mount. But after throwing the shock up here and kind of laying all the parts up there, I realized that wasn't going to work. That gets too close to the shock if I were to mount back there, and if there's any deflection or anything, we're going to be beating the crap out of this shock. So I had to move it forward, and because we're moving it forward, we're increasing the leverage of what these will see. So we'll add this gusset to the rear one, and that'll strengthen it up enough that I don't need to worry about it. We're not going to be riding two up on this or anything weird, so we should be plenty strong. So what I'm going to do now is kind of finish welding all this in. I do need to cut a little bit off these tabs, and if you need any of these tabs or any of these tabs, Steve at Mayhem Metalworks is your man. But I'm going to go ahead and modify these. For the sake of keeping the video short, I'm not going to do step by step, whatever. I'll show you the finished thing once I got it all burnt together. Got a lot done off camera, so I just wanted to catch you guys up. Got our seat hoop welded, the gusset and everything. It's fully tigged, bolted on. You can see it's kind of dipping, but that's because the back of the bike's actually dipped. So once we get it lifted to where it needs to be and we get the shocks on it, we should be good. Plenty strong. So that's that. I still need to make some crossbars that the seat will bolt to. I gotta go and get some flat stock for that. But while I was waiting to go order some of that, I was trying to figure out where and how to cover up the Moto Gadget M unit, the battery and all that sort of stuff. So I decided I was going to make a tray that would go under that seat, and that's what this is. Real simple. I want to say it's 16 gauge. I just set the frame, the seat hoop down on the 16 gauge, traced it with a Sharpie on the inside, and that gave us the bottom. And then for the sides, it's more 16 gauge, cut the 2 inches wide. And to get it a consistent cut, what I did was set up a piece of flat stock on my bandsaw that we converted. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up there in the description. Made a little fence 2 inches away from the blade. Just fed the sheet metal through. Didn't have enough to make one long continuous piece. So, as you can see, there's a couple stops and starts in there. Got it all together and MIG'd the inside. The big blobs, those are all MIG, and the small stuff that you see is the burn through with the TIG. Because what I did was did the inside with the MIG, and then on the outside I just went and just ran short little beads all over to keep warpage down with the TIG, and then hit it with the flat disc, got it pretty smooth, and just went over it with the DA and some 80 grit, and that's what we have. I'm going to show you how it's going to fit. It'll drop in a little further. I've got to notch the front where the tank mount is. You can see it's sitting right on that, but it will sit just like that, like it is in the back. It'll sit down, it'll bolt to the frame, and then in that pan we'll have our battery and our relays and the Moto Gadget M unit, and I may even mount the third brake light to this. Not sure yet, and then got to figure out a license plate mount. So that's where we are with that. I'm gonna keep going, get it notched and clearance for the tank, and we should be able to drop it in there. And again, it'll bolt. There's some holes that are threaded in the frame, so we'll use that, and that'll also be our ground for the M unit, the battery, and all that. Well, that's going to be it for this one, for this episode on this build series. I've gone as far as I can. I've got to pick up some flat stock to mount the seat. No big deal, that's kind of boring stuff. Also have to order the shocks for the rear of this, which I think I've got a good measurement for. Get those in, and then we need to start working on like the brakes, the throttle. I got to get the carb on, and then we're going to start wiring it. But we're getting pretty close. So if you're enjoying this content, leave me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and consider hitting that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, get up, get out there, do it.